and welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Tom Fornelli, that's Bud Elliott, that's Danny Kanell. I'm Chip Patterson, coming to you live at youtube.com/cover3 and everywhere you get your podcasts on demand. Thanks for hanging out. Smash that subscribe, smash that like, and come and join us in the chat, a.k.a. the Cover 3 Tailgate, where Brett jumped in about 2 hours before we got started, and he wanted, this is really thoughtful from Brett, he wanted to wish a happy birthday to Ryan Williams, the Alabama wide receiver, no longer 17 years old. On February 9th, he had his 18th birthday. So congrats to Ryan Williams. You should register to vote. Maybe enjoy a pack of smokes if you are so inclined.
I think you got to be 19 in Alabama, right?
For
to smoke or vote.
I haven't lived in Alabama in like 13 years, but I'm pretty sure you had to be 19 to buy stuff. There's a couple states where it's 19, not 18. So
I'd love to hear the reasoning behind that. We just don't think your lungs are ready at 18. You got to wait till you're 19 before you can get that.
I'm right about this. Okay. It's 21 now, I guess, but used to be 19. Yeah.
Okay.
Wow. I didn't know it was 21 anywhere to get smokes.
Yeah,
I miss smoking sometimes.
You do?
Yeah.
Well, as you've been through your month-long illness,
I have not missed it the last month. No.
Yeah, right. And we want to have that as sharp as possible.
So you can't go buy a can of dip at night at 18 most places now.
Wow.
I haven't 18 in like 22 years. So
these poor kids. No wonder they're so angry. They don't have any, nice, calm, cooling, smooth tobacco to bring them down a little bit.
Cover 3 podcast officially wishes that everybody obey your local laws and ordinances as it pertains to any of the following items. Hey, so lots to get to here. We've got some interesting movement on the assistant coaching carousel. And coming up in just a little bit later on this month, we're going to sort of finally put a stamp on the assistant coaching carousel. Once all the pieces have fallen into place, sort of figure out and take stock of which of these coaching staffs really made big gains, which ones had big losses, and what it might mean for these programs heading into 2025. Today, a little bit later on, we are going to put our final stamp on the transfer portal winter window, because remember, we still have another spring portal window that will be coming after spring practice, where we do expect there will be some movement. How much? And will we have 2 windows? What will the future of the transfer portal look like? A lot of those discussions coming up a little bit later on today. Congratulations to Mikey, a big winner in Danny Kanell's squares.
He was very much in the mix for 2 squares too, late. Mm-hmm. And what's crazy is that the other buddy, my buddy Sean, won 2 squares. He won halftime and he won whole game. So he was the big winner of the night.
Sean at the party?
No, he wasn't even there.
No, it's Sean Stellato.
We had one couple that was there that won together, and they won the third quarter. They won the third quarter number, I think, was the one they won.
Okay.
That was it. Everybody else was remote.
So you had a chance to win the fourth quarter. I was going to scream rigged. So
I was in it right there. But I think so. I got into a little bit of a dilemma because I think it was for one of my daughters. I think there was one where Cameron was going to win.
But you put the money up?
Yeah. Yeah. So like that's an 80-20 split, right? 80 going my way, 20 going her way. I mean,
how good is she at math?
She wasn't even paying attention either. That's what pissed me off. I'm trying to teach them about the values of Super Bowl squares, how much fun they can be. And they weren't even paying attention. It's killing me.
Speaking of winning, I mean, if we're going to skip the Thursday show to play Interclub, we won an Interclub, right?
Oh, yeah.
All right, let's go.
We took it home. I mean, come on. And we got smoked on the front. We were down 3, so we lost the front and came roaring back big time to go win up 2. So big flip on the back.
Go.
Love it. Let's do a little Super Bowl trivia in the wake of last night's big win for the Philadelphia Eagles, 40-22 over the Kansas City Chiefs. Devonta Smith joins elite company, winning a Heisman, a national championship, and a Super Bowl. There are 4 other individuals that have hit that triumvirate of Heisman, college national championship, and Super Bowl. Can you name them?
There's 4?
4.
That's more than I thought there would be.
Marcus Allen.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm guessing we have to go Roger Staubach.
Nope.
Really?
We already said Devontae, right?
Yes.
Yep, he's the one.
Yeah, he's the fifth. He's the fifth one to do it.
Plunkett?
Mm-mm.
Wow.
There's another USC.
Another USC. Well, no quarterbacks.
Reggie Bush.
Reggie Bush.
The Saints, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. He was on the Saints team.
Yeah.
And then the schools remaining for the last two.
Charles Woodson.
Charles Woodson, Michigan. Okay. And then this was just going to give it away. The Pittsburgh Panthers.
Kenny Pickett? Wait. No, he didn't.
Heisman. Dorsett.
Yes. Kenny Dorsett. Yeah, the elite company of winning a Heisman Trophy, a national championship in college, and a Super Bowl. Alabama's Devonta Smith, Pitt's Tony Dorsett, USC's Marcus Allen, Michigan's Charles Woodson, and USC's Reggie Bush.
I saw the Kenny Pickett's a Super Bowl winner like last night going in my head. I was like, man.
Hey.
Crazy. And he got to play.
Threw a pass.
Yeah.
There was definitely a more than how many players are going to throw passes prop.
Yes, it was over 2.5, and Kenny Pickett cashed it.
Kenny Pickett cashed it.
Wow. So Mikey in the chat put Cam Newton, but it's Super Bowl winner, right?
Correct. Not forgot to fall on the fumble.
But Cam's fine because he won his MVP.
Yeah, he don't care.
He doesn't care.
He'd rather have the MVP.
All right, let's discuss. There's a lot of movement, and again, sometimes these assistant changes take a little bit of a deeper dive for us to get into. So come on, Mel Tucker. Let's jump on the carousel. So I actually want to start with something, Bud, that you brought up before the show. So Ohio State has promoted Keenan Bailey to co-offensive coordinator after announcing that Brian Hartline was going to be stepping up and promoted to offensive coordinator. As we are now trying to take stock, and again, Keenan Bailey, for those who are not aware, he was the tight ends coach now, and he's going to be working with Brian Hartline. They've got a new run game coordinator in Tyler Bowen. But what is the makeup of this Ohio State offensive staff right now?
Yeah, I'm going to have to go listen to Bucknuts Morning 5 after this just to make sure I don't screw this up.
Shout out to Dave Biddle. Shout out to Bucknuts. You know, he's a big fan of the show. We're a big fan of his.
Chip, Danny, Tom, congratulations on also being coordinators now of some type for Ohio State's offense. I believe I also received my promotion this morning. This feels a little weird. I'm not saying bad weird, but it's kind of like how many cooks are in the kitchen? Maybe they're just all sous chefs, and Ryan Day is actually like the chef, right? Okay, like Hartline, you're a coordinator now, and Keenan, you're a coordinator now, and then Tyler Bowen, who I think is kind of sneaky good coordinating the run game, because I remember when the Hokies hired him, I was like, man, I hate his passing offense at Marshall, but they really do some fun run concept stuff. So maybe for kind of undervalued assets here, you know, getting Bowen over just to focus on the run game stuff, because obviously the passing game struggles that he showed with his offenses at Marshall strongly continued with the Hokies. I mean, their passing game has been horrid since he's been there. I think that could be a really good hire for them on the offensive running side of things. But how is this all going to work? Like, is Hartline going to call the plays? Is Bailey going to call the plays? Do we think this is kind of like, hey, I got 3 helpers and Ryan Day is the real dude again? I don't know.
When did this even happen? This is the first I'm hearing of it. Did this happen yesterday or this morning?
Last night or this morning, yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't even know.
I saw Pete Thamel report it, so we might still be in the process of finalizing, which leads to what my hunch is here. But DK, you got any sort of thoughts on the stirring of the positions and the roles and the titles in Columbus?
Yeah, we talked a lot about this last week when we were talking about, like, what does it actually look like, the collaborative, effort that it could be all these coaches that game plan during the week. They all have their 2 cents. They've got their plays they call, so it's not too complicated. But I do wonder who actually is going to have the final say. Is it Ryan Day? Is he the one that kind of, and I'm sure he probably will, even if he's not calling the plays to the quarterback in the helmet, he might be able to step in and say, no, I don't want that one, pretty quick, because you're talking ahead of time before the last play is over. To me, am I just the only one that sees this as ways to get guys more money?
Bingo. I was like, this to me seems like the Homeboy Hall of Fame. Sounds like Ryan Day realized that he had a lot more leverage to be able to pass out a couple raises, and if we're getting the raises through the system means creating new titles and being able to, just put fancy new names on things, that's what leads to a bigger paycheck for his coaches, the coaches who stood by him, the coaches who helped him be able to save his job with that playoff run. I see this one very much as being a way for Ryan Day to capitalize on whatever he's got with Ohio State to get his coaches money. And look, good for Ryan Day. That's how you keep coaches loyal. That's how you keep them working hard, is by being able to show them that kind of support. So I definitely understand why there would be concern, or at least some questions about what this means. I don't think it means much. I think Ryan Day is still the boss, and I think a lot of this shuffling and promotion probably just gets more money for his guys.
Makes sense to me. Like the chat is concerned that Bowen is coaching O-line, but has not been an O-line coach. There were teams even before this was legal who basically, once the media got ushered out of practice, they had a shadow coaching staff kind of come on and do the real coaching, and the guys who were coaches were basically there just to recruit. Now that's legal to do. So I think that's, everybody is just playing to their strengths nowadays, or if you're optimizing, you should be playing to your strengths.
A few other sort of movements along the assistant coordinator. This one also an internal promotion. Matt Wells, new offensive coordinator for Kansas State. He steps into that role as we spent a lot of time, not a decent amount of time at the end of Thursday's show, talking about Avery Johnson and sort of the way things are going to be moving forward. He had already stepped in as a part of that staff. Tom, any big reaction to or thoughts on that for what it could mean for the Wildcats?
I mean, I think it helps with continuity in that you're not going outside and getting somebody else in. You're having somebody who was part of that offense last year. I think it's just I think it's good, probably in a sense, for the development of Avery Johnson, and that you're not bringing in a new voice, teaching him new things. You've got somebody who's familiar with him, who was working with him last year. So I look at it as a positive, if not like a big time needle mover move.
It's a good coach. We get it. Let's see. Hold on.
Probably got a bit of a raw deal. I think you just
it's like Texas Tech, Kansas State. When is the next time they play on the field?
Mm-hmm. He definitely got a raw deal at Texas Tech. He had them playing pretty well. There was a faction, somebody with a lot of money, had a lot of influence, watered him out, so he got sent out. I think he's a really good football coach. He's done a good job with quarterbacks. I know him, talked to him a few times, covered him. I think it's a good move.
November 1st, Texas Tech at Kansas State. Matt Wells revenge game. Circle it.
Remember it for Lock Spot.
Pre-lock. What's it? FanDuel Sportsbook, where you can make every moment more. What's my blind bet?
Mikey, make a note.
What's my blind bet on Kansas State? Team total over against Texas Tech on November the 1st. Marshall Faulk joins Colorado as a running backs coach.
That's 3 Hall of Famers on the coaching staff now.
It's because you go Dion, Sapp, and Faulk.
Sapp and Marshall, yeah.
I did not know that this is where Marshall wants to go with this, but all right.
So don't you think so? Obviously, Dion, this is kind of his thing, right? He's doing this. These players all run in the same circles, right? It's the most illustrious fraternity in the sport. So they're at a lot of events together. They talk. So I'm sure even when Dion was at Jackson State, they start this process like, hey, what are you doing? Man, that's a lot of work. Are you sure you want to do this? And Dion's probably like, no, it's not. Man, I'm having fun. I'm having a blast. So Warren Sapp, and if you notice too, Warren Sapp started showing up before he actually signed on. So we get to feel for the atmosphere, for the energy. And my hunch is that these players would say, man, I don't know. The hours are long and I don't want to have to recruit all off season. Well, guess what? Dion's already made it pretty clear. I'm not traveling around the country sitting at everybody's point. You don't have to if you're Marshall Faulk or Warren Sapp. They'll come to you. So I think they're looking at it from the same standpoint where they've got sort of a different role that they play on the team, and they don't have to necessarily grind the way some coaches do on the recruiting trail. And so they find it attractive, and it's great for Dion. It's great for the brand. He leans into it, and they'll sell it like, hey, we got 3 gold jackets, and it'll work for some players. Yeah, absolutely.
So in the the coach, shadow coach, recruiter. But in that sense, we're looking at Colorado's coaching staff, and I would think that the experience that they bring means that you are there to coach them up and coach up that roster. I mean, that's not, if Marshall Faulk's not going to be hitting the trail, then he's got to be closing deals, or he's got to be like really helping develop these players and being able to teach them the intricacies of the game, right?
Yeah, and I think I don't recall Marshall having been out, but Dion was pretty affiliated with the Under Armour stuff before he took the Jackson State job. So he would be at some camps, and certainly would have been at like the Under Armour stuff that we have here in Orlando for the game. Dion, I mean, I don't recall Falk being there, but I do think you could pretty quickly figure out like who enjoys coaching and like who's really getting after it and who's just like, hey man, my guy asked me to be out here, so I came out here to support. But I mean, there's a pretty palpable difference between some of these retired guys who actually enjoy the coaching aspect and who don't. You can tell. So I'm sure Dion's had conversations with Falk like, hey, like, this is real. Like, if you want to come here, you got to coach. We're about it. So I'm excited to see it.
Yep. 100%.
You wore my Colorado colors to support today. Look at that.
Hey, look at that. Shane jumped in. He wanted to hear about the Marshall Faulk at Colorado. It is definitely a lot of great experience and sort of just a wealth of institutional knowledge that he can provide to that coaching staff and to the players there in Boulder. We've this one also came in from Jerry in the tailgate. Can Belichick kids coach, or is this straight up nepotism? I thought, Steve Belichick, got a nice track record. You went through, but no. We got another Belichick, baby. Brian Belichick comes to join the North Carolina coaching staff. Sure. Right?
Nepo Carolina.
Yeah, that's what the N in UNC. That's what it stands for.
It's football. I mean, I want to say it's the worst, but this is life, isn't it? I mean, isn't every business have nepotism in it? I mean, I know it's in broadcasting. I know it's in the NFL. It's all over. It's in business. It's in franchising. I mean, it's in everything. You look out for your kids. This is just the latest example. I do think the ones that can coach, they figure it out. Now they get a leg up. They get the opportunity, but they do make the most of it. I think like Kyle Shanahan's done a phenomenal job. Still remains to be seen. And a guy like Brian Schottenheimer, who just got that gig. Eventually, you're either going to get found out one way or another. You can either do it or you can't. Now, do they get the opportunity ahead of everybody or a lot of people? Yes. So we'll find out. I don't know if he can coach, but we'll see.
I mean, he has coached before, correct? Yeah. So it's like, I don't know. It's like, it was weird because it's like, oh yeah, he has another son. I completely forgot about it.
Right. So we've got Michael Lombardi, general manager, and then Matt Lombardi, offensive assistant. We've got Bill Belichick, the head coach of the team. We've got Steve Belichick, the defensive coordinator. And now we've got Brian Belichick. While this is, by the way, our very own Matt Zenitz, who's stud. He's the one who got out there with the report and brought it to my attention. To my knowledge, North Carolina has not finalized exactly what his job is going to be on the staff, so that is TBD. If it is working with the defensive backfield, you're going to be talking about a group that is bringing over a couple players from Washington, a couple players from Minnesota, Gavin Gibson from ECU. It is a brand new secondary there for North Carolina's defense. So it is going to be important to be able to get somebody in there that can get everyone on the same page. Will he be found out? Let's say we'll find out when they have to defend Josh Hoover on Labor Day in Chapel Hill. Congratulations. You play TCU right out the gate.
Just another fun fact, by the way, because now that both of his sons are on his staff at North Carolina, and a reminder that his oldest child, his daughter Amanda, is the head coach of the women's lacrosse team at Holy Cross. So the entire family is coaching.
Yeah.
How? Never mind.
The girlfriend?
No, say it. Say it.
Yeah.
How does that fall in line here? She's younger than all of them, right?
Yes, she is.
Yeah.
And she was wearing an Atlanta Falcons Super Bowl champion shirt.
Yes, she was.
And she was in the Dunkin' Donuts commercial.
Yep.
Right next to him.
Amazing.
Amazing.
I mean,
you saw the jokes about the ring years?
What?
You saw the jokes about the ring years when Belichick had a whole handful of rings.
What?
Somebody on Twitter said, "Do you think he wore the O2 to celebrate the year of her birth?"
It's good. Good stuff.
Amazing.
Yeah, it is. It is amazing times we live in.
Yeah, what if she is? That's a good point. What if she's installed as the recruiting director?
I mean,
there's a lot of attractive young ladies that are in that role at a lot of schools that do really well.
Anything else on? Bud, Notre Dame's got its general manager replacement. What? What's on your note card for?
They went and got James Blanchard from Texas Tech. There've been a lot of kind of reports that he had like full control over the Texas Tech roster, and Texas Tech really kind of more of a bifurcated approach where like the coaches coach and the front office kind of does front office type stuff. It's obviously pretty mixed results. Like I like Joey McGuire just fine, but I guess I'm the hater on this pod because I just don't see the actual like results to justify all the media hype that everybody in the state of Texas seems to love giving those guys. No, like nothing against them. I just like, okay, like cool. They go 7-5, whatever. But I think this is a nice replacement because remember, they lost their assistant GM to USC. So, and Blanchard gets 1.5 over 3. So that's a nice.
Wait, I thought he was staying at Tech.
Wait, really? I read that it was 1.5 over 3 on ESPN.
3 days ago, Texas Tech general manager James Blanchard turns down Notre Dame. Yeah, he turned him down. He stayed at Tech.
Wow. Okay, I'm sorry. I was sitting next to other guys in the crowd at the convention when they were like, he took this thing. I was like, wow. Okay, so 1.5 Texas Tech kept him.
Listen, great win for Texas Tech. Hey, here we go.
Yeah.
Listen, Joey McGuire, when you're 23-16 across your 3 years at Texas Tech, how many of those 23 wins was as good as being able to hold on to your guy? James?
The chat saying he accepted the offer and then walked it back.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't see much.
I was sitting next to other coaches. Yeah, at the convention. You're like, wow, look at this.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't see much of anything this weekend, but I do remember that.
So the Joey McGuire has not the same, but in somewhat of the same vicinity of a 3-year sample size as Sonny Dykes. It's just that Joey McGuire has been like this, and Sonny Dykes was like, woo! And then, sort of like calmed down after that. Sonny Dykes 27-13, Joey McGuire 23-16. Joey McGuire 16-11 in Big 12 play over a 3-year run. So I think that they're just happy for the consistency and somebody who wants to stay. That's probably what's giving them all the happy feels in Lubbock. So we'll see.
Speaking of rumors, it feels like Neil Brown is possibly going to happen to Virginia Tech.
That's a great hire.
Is OC?
Yeah,
for OC.
Good hire.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
That's a very, very good hire for Brent Pry, a coaching staff that I think needed. That team was too talented to have the results that they had. They had a lot of shortcomings in games where they played, where they could have won, should have won. And I know a lot of Virginia Tech fans were very frustrated with the coaching and sort of the way that things went during the year. So I think Neil Brown's a plus addition to that staff for sure.
Jawan Sider reportedly leaving Penn State for the Irish. So I think a very nice get for Marcus Freeman. Good running back coach, really good recruiter in the state of Florida.
A lot of big money assistant poaching going on in the Rust Belt these days.
There is.
I mean, this is it's that time of year. We have that National Signing Day might have not been a big deal, but it at least does sort of signify the beginning of this time of year where a lot of those staffs do end up changing over. A lot of moves are made before we get everybody set and locked in for spring practice. We got a Texas Tech reference there, and Texas Tech is one of the most notable teams from the winter transfer portal. We'll get into a look at some of those classes that stood out, some of the teams with big additions, and more next.
The clock never stops. Relive the greatest moments with uninterrupted highlights and more.
It's Carousel! Go! Wonderful goal!
On the UEFA Champions League channel. Streaming free.
Back here on the Cover 3 podcast. Now, the transfer portal closed a while ago, but then we got it extended for the college football playoff teams. And then you got a little bit more movement because grad transfers can jump into the portal whenever. And not everybody has a home, but it does seem like, at least until the spring portal, things have calmed down. So let's jump on in. Now, we've had some recommendations. We've had some meetings. So we've had a lot of discussions and reporting. Danny, what do you think the future of the transfer portal looks like in terms of number of windows, the length of those windows? How do you see things continuing to evolve as roster management and roster building will continue to evolve here in the next couple of years?
I think we're going to go to the one window that'll be as close as you possibly can to being after the season, but it'll still be during the playoffs. It'll probably be 2 to 3 weeks. And I think that's probably the way it should be. And that's what the coaches have been, they unanimously voted together, even though, we'll see what, they do with this actual rule and whether they listen to the coaches or not. But the spring portal window definitely is problematic from the standpoint of building a roster, defending a roster, trying to keep guys together when there should be enough time and opportunity and scouting and opportunity for players to shop around with one window. So I think that's eventually where we'll end up. And hopefully the ideally opens up after the majority of the bowls, even though I don't know if that's going to matter that much as far as players opting out.
I mean, I think they can propose whatever they want, but I don't know how I don't know what grounds they're going to have to say, like, you have to stay at a school a semester extra, I think they can propose. I think they'll get sued and they'll lose.
Yeah, I think you're going to keep having 2 windows at the end of each semester is how it's going to go.
Agreed.
Why have any windows then?
That's more likely than one, I think, at this point.
The window doesn't really constrain the player. The window constrains the teams from contacting the player, allegedly, unless you're, what Wisconsin is alleging Miami did, right, with Lucas.
So the winter window was already shorter than the last winter window. We went from about 35 days down to 20 days. Then this spring window is set to be about 9-10 days. And I think that's even shaved off a little bit from what was about 15 there last year. There is always the 30-day window with the departure of a head coach for any reason. I don't think that's going to be going anywhere. I think that's probably going to remain and just sort of always be a part of our transfer portal movement that we get used to talking about college football. But I'd like it if it was just one window.
Well, yeah. Because it'd be easier for us.
January, right? Why can't it just be January's the window?
I think the transfer window should be from May through July.
Like the summer when
we've got really nothing to talk about and we're just ranking things. I think that's when the transfer window should be open.
That would be ideal.
Thinking of the show, I appreciate you, Tom.
No problem.
There you go. Looking out for the show. I mean, Bud, when you're talking to, obviously the coaches have made their voices heard. Are personnel guys expecting, or are personnel guys operating with this, nope, every 6 months we're going to be back doing the same song and dance?
I think as of now, they expect it. The one change is potentially, are these guys less likely to transfer if they're locked into longer-term deals that are being given to them now because of the house money, right? You may want to transfer schools, but if you can't actually make any money at the other school, then you're probably not going to leave. So we could see a slowdown. I already think we saw a big time drop in the talent level in the transfer portal this year. I mean, I look at this and this sucks. And I think that's a great thing for the sport. We talked about it 2 weeks ago. The schools are finding ways to basically keep their best players, or almost all schools are finding ways to keep their very best players. And if that means overspending the house money to keep your studs, cool, man. Because guys, 15 to 105 on a roster are pretty replaceable unless you just lose all of them. So I think that's a good thing. And I we had a little panel with a bunch of GMs and stuff down here in Orlando at the Nike Coach of the Year Clinic stuff, which if you're a football fan, like you should probably go to these, I think, like not to give them, free ads, but if you want to learn little scheme stuff, kind of learn how stuff, works. And they're talking mostly to just high school coaches to show up to meet them, but I get a lot out of it going to them. So they kind of thought the same, like that schools are doing a much better job of keeping their best players, but you can still get quality depth, guys who maybe would have been depth at a Georgia, dropping down to, like FSU was on stage, USF was on stage, that type of level. But most schools found a way to keep their studs.
All right, well, let's take a look at some of these teams, some of these classes, and sort of the questions that come out of it. I want to begin with the LSU Tigers because LSU is number 1 on the transfer portal team rankings. 16 commits in the portal class, an average player rating of 90.47. The LSU transfer portal experience storyline last season was that they got a lot of guys on campus and they were not able to bring as many of those guys on. You remember Brian Kelly has the sit-down report with local media, the sit-down interview with local media. He says, we're not buying players. And, that got a lot of pushback, especially given the current NIL era that we're in. This LSU team was in the mix for the college football playoff and the SEC championship in the middle of October. The 3-game losing streak hits, and you got a lot of frustration coming out of that. But this is still an LSU team that every year under Brian Kelly has had a shot. He's got to win a season opener. He hadn't done that yet. But they are a Tigers team that to me is meeting expectations. When we look at this portal class, do you think that they did a better job of being able to identify places where they got their needs and hit on those needs?
Well, yes. And also, I mean, Brian Kelly's comments last year were, I won't say disingenuous, but they were clearly trying to save their money for their high school class, which then summarily fell apart, right?
Yeah.
Like, Michigan bought Bryce Underwood with Oracle. And so LSU all of a sudden had a bunch of cash, to splash the pot. And if Brian Kelly doesn't win this year, I'm pretty sure he's going to get fired. So, like, you kind of need to be all in. Like, the whole building for the future with high school stuff, like if you're LSU, you're like, yeah, we need to go in hardcore right now and get as much talent as you can. I thought LSU did a really nice job. And I mean, you can't waste 2 years of Jalen Daniels, and then not to say that Nussmeier is better than Daniels, but I mean, if you waste 2 years of Jalen Daniels or Jaden Daniels and you waste 2 years of Nussmeier, I mean, why shouldn't you be fired? Like, that's pretty egregious. So I think they need to really go all in and make sure they're supporting their quarterback because they probably don't have another one waiting in the wings.
I think you've said this a couple times, and I was a little bit skeptical first about teams cycling, when they're going to go all in, when they're going to spend in certain off seasons, and when they're going to dial it back and save up for potentially the next season. We talked about with Auburn kind of saving before when they realized they didn't have something. I think this is the school, the example. And I would say if you have a top 15 quarterback, which he's probably stronger than that, he's probably a top 5 quarterback preseason, that you want to try to win. You want to try to go all in like you're talking about. So I think absolutely this is one of those examples where LSU feels like they have an opportunity to bring one home, and they're going to do everything they can and spend everything they can in order to try to do it.
I mean, Michael Van Buren waiting in the wings. Totally love the take because I think he's a guy who's proven he can play a little bit, but he certainly didn't play at an amazing level. And I'd be pretty surprised if he's actually as good as Nussmeier. So yes, it's like a nice quality building piece, but let's be real here. Like, your window to win may be closing a little bit unless you really get things going. So,
do you know what I like about
the
this?
chat's mad about Patrick Payton's ranking. Look, based on how he played last year at FSU, I completely agree. Like, he acted like he'd already made it, and then I bet you got his NFL draft stuff, and it was like 5th, 6th undrafted level because he played terribly last year. But he also played really well in 23. So
is
got
he
to
still
Part of the
6'?
best defensive line in the country.
Yeah.
I mean, is he
And
still
was it
6'5",
because he was playing with
250?
Fisk and with Jared Verse, or
Yeah.
is it, or is it because he mailed it in because he was paid last year? Like that, those are valid questions.
Mhm.
Probably both.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit. I like the wide receivers here because Was CJ Daniels a miss, or do you think that health, he just never really pulled it together? The Liberty wide receiver that we were looking at, because when you lose Brian Thomas, when you lose Malik Neighbors, we knew that Kyron Lacey was going to be a big part of that passing attack. But man, watching LSU last year, it did seem that there was just not the depth of like really big time game changers. You get Nick Anderson from Oklahoma, who has dealt with his own health issues in terms of being able to stay on the field. But then Berrien Brown from Kentucky, that's another dynamic talent right there. I like the tools that they were able to get to go and get that for Garrett Nussmeier. That's probably the one thing from this class that stands out to me.
The CJ Daniels thing, the Liberty offense, first of all, you have to look at the players they were going against. But also the Liberty offense is so simple. And the LSU offense, not overly complicated, but a bit more complex than what they were running at Liberty. And maybe CJ Daniels just had trouble adapting to the new offense while also facing a much higher quality of competition.
Fair.
As far as who they did get, I think Berrien Brown's the most underrated player in their class. I loved Berrien Brown at Kentucky. I think he's going to be a stud in that offense.
They also really needed to revamp that O-line. I mean, that was one of the reasons why I was like, why are you not going all in this year? With that O-line, like you should be trying to build around that and make a run. And the SEC was very gettable this year, and they failed to take advantage of that, which, of course, because you're having to allocate a lot of your money towards Bryce and the high school kids, they ended up losing. I get it. Like you're trying to think longer term. I don't really completely fault them for that, but when they kind of got to recognize it, got to win now, and they're losing a whole bunch of good offensive linemen to the league. So we'll see if they have done a good job of rebuilding it. But I think they have, at least guys who have shown they can play, and maybe there won't be an enormous drop off.
I hate to sound like a record that is skipping, but Ole Miss has another big portal class.
Well, it's because they've got 55,000 players in it.
Like
You'll notice if you look at the top 15, there are only 2 programs in there that have more than 20 commits.
Right. I mean, but this is every year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is Ole Miss is out here with, 15, anywhere from like 15 to 25 portal additions pretty much every single offseason since we really started like tracking this and breaking it open, and they've delivered pretty consistent results. I mean, I guess like before we start diving into the nitty gritty of the class, is this sustainable? Has Lane Kiffin done it enough at a high enough level that we should assume that the Rebels are going to be able to just be a 20-player portal team every single season?
Wait, there's 2 different questions you asked there, but they're kind of blended into one. Should we assume they're going to continue to be a 20-kid portal team every year? I think until they show us otherwise, yes.
Right, but is it sustainable?
Is the winning on the field sustainable with this?
No.
Probably
not when you're
not.
9th in the SEC in high school recruiting.
Not if the level of talent in the transfer portal continues to drop.
Mm-hmm.
Then no.
I think you go a little bit when you do it this much. I think there's a high boom or bust rate.
It's very volatile.
And he's been pretty boom. I mean, we saw that at Florida State. Like they were going kind of this route, heavy in the portal, bringing in key players. And when it starts falling apart, there's not a lot of depth to those relationships and the commitment, and you see guys throwing the towel. So I think that's always a risk when you have so much turnover in the portal and you kind of build your foundation through that.
Yeah, I think if you're a fan and like you don't follow super closely, but you do follow recruiting kind of tangentially, like being ranked at the top of the transfer classes is great, but it doesn't mean the same thing as being ranked at the top of the high school recruiting.
Right.
Like it is much more volatile. And if you go back and you look at last year's top recruiting classes, the teams that did good, that were ranked in the top 10 or 15 were typically already good. You'll see other programs that were kind of mediocre who had huge classes that were rated highly, and they were still mediocre because it really still comes down to what your high school class is. And we have seen examples of programs who've relied heavily on the portal. You have up and down years. It's much more volatile. Florida State had a great season 2 years ago with a large portal class. Last year's portal class did not hit the same, and they had a terrible season. So that could be something we see at Ole Miss, because you look at who they're replacing. Like, that's a lot of talent that they had on that team, that some of which they got in the portal, some of which they developed, but it's gone. So now you're relying on a whole lot of new players in there. So when I look at these classes overall, how they're ranked, and like I look at Oregon being 4th with 9 commits, that stands out to me. because that's a team that's awesome recruiting high school. That's really always at the top of the rankings there. And they are supplementing what is already an awesome roster with great transfers as well. So those are the things that stand out to me when I look at these rankings.
Wasn't that Ohio State last year too?
Correct.
I think they had 7 or 8, maybe 9, but they were incredible players.
Austin in the chat, Austin Gray says, why are we acting like Ole Miss hasn't done this for like 4 years? I think there are two things here. They have done it for 4 years. The thing is, now that like they had first mover advantage, them, FSU, Tennessee, a few other schools who went out and spent super early, like basically ask forgiveness later type response. Now everybody has money. So Ole Miss's money advantage is gone relative to what it was 3-4 years ago. And in addition to like the competition for the players being way up because everybody has money, I think the level of talent in the portal is down. So you're paying a lot more now and you're not able to scoop everybody and the available talent is down. So Austin, that's why we think maybe that is not as sustainable for Ole Miss. And ultimately, he says third most successful program in the SEC over that period. Yes, like that's why Chip asked if it's sustainable now because the factors around the portal have changed.
Right. That is the conversation around Ole Miss is how much longer can you do this? Because to do
nobody
it,
flipping houses with 7% interest rates, right? Like
hell yeah, bud. Let's go.
Situation changed, man.
That is the thing that is truly interesting to me because if he does, he is the portal king. Like then you really are. If you continue to operate at this level from a roster building standpoint, and I will give Lane Kiffin and his staff this, they do a pretty good job of making sure that not every portal edition is a rental, that some of these guys are transferring in with multiple years of eligibility so that you do get a little bit of continuity. And maybe when you're thinking about being Ole Miss, you're like, you know what? If this gets us 9 wins consistently year over year means I'm the most successful coach in Ole Miss history. This is a program that has never played for the SEC championship. This is a program whose like long history of football includes some years of 4 wins, 3 wins, 5 wins. And so maybe you commit to being a portal, like a total portal team, and you do lower that tippy top ceiling versus what you could do building it up year over year with high school recruiting, but you do at least have a pretty high floor. I think that would be my best read of it.
Who's the Ole Miss AD?
Right now?
Yeah.
I don't know who it is since Ross left.
Shoot. It's not Keith, is it?
Are you wondering about how long the administration would be down with consistent?
Keith Carter.
Keith Carter would be happy if Ole Miss went 9-3 for like the rest of time, right? because that keeps you in a job. You can raise your family in one place. Like you're probably going to get raises. The thing is, the people you have to pitch.
Lose your basketball coach though.
Yeah.
The people you have to pitch, they don't want to invest in that because like college ball is a business for the school, but for the boosters who fund it, it's not, right? They're doing it like they're little owners of very small NFL type teams. They want to see the peaks and valleys. They don't want 9-3 every year if it means you never win a title. Like they would like to see one. So it's a tricky thing because like you're thrilled with it as an administration, but you can't act too happy about it when you go to your boosters to sell because you got to pitch that more is possible.
Yep. I hear that. All right. Coming up on the other side, a top team, a top program that has boosted its transfer portal group, but did they do enough? And Texas Tech. Let's dive into the class and see what it looks like and more next.
I feel home when I see the faces that remember my own. When I'm with my friends, I feel home.
Back here on the Cover 3 podcast, Tom, you pointed to Oregon. They were top 5 in the recruiting rankings last year. They are top 5 in the recruiting rankings again. But as you pointed out, just 9 commits in the group, an average player rating of 92.1, according to 24/7 Sports. And that is based on average player rating, the highest average player rating in the entire country. When we take a look at Oregon's transfer portal class, Tom, what stands out to you as some of the players that you think will be able to jump in with the Ducks and be able to be key contributors?
Well, I think the obvious thing that stands out and I think is important, is what's not in there. There's no quarterback. So, they got what's his the kid from
Dante
UCLA,
Moore?
Dante Moore. Yeah. They got him. So maybe they're looking at him as the replacement for Dylan Gabriel, and they're going to move forward with that, or maybe they're going to wait to the spring and see what pops open. But based on what they do have, like Emmanuel Pregnone from USC, they've got to put in the inside of their offensive line. They're losing players there. They got Mekhi Hughes at running back, who will step in and fill the Jordan James role. Malik Benson, the wide receiver from Florida State, who will help fill in for Tez Johnson. Like, this is a team, like I said, they've recruited very well out of high school. So they've got a very talented roster, but they're looking at it going into next season saying, all right, where are some spots we could use a little depth, maybe find a starter where we don't feel super confident about and just supplement it. And I think that's what they've done a terrific job of. They don't have, like we've talked about it a ton, like Bud's, there's no superstars really in this transfer class. There's not the oh my God, the game changer guy, but there are a lot of very good, very above average, valuable guys who will be contributors at that kind of elite level where maybe you're not going to rely on them to be the guy, but they can fill their role. And I look at this class and I see a whole hell of a lot of guys who are going to step in, they're going to get snaps, they're going to be valuable, and they're going to help improve the floor of this team and maybe the ceiling a bit too. It's a very, very nice class. And when you look at the outgoing, they do have a lot of guys who are leaving, but unless you are a diehard Oregon fan and you've known this roster up and down because you've been following recruiting for the last whatever years, you remember these guys getting offered and tweeting their top 5 schools, there's not a ton of names in there where you're like, unless you're just a diehard fan, that are popping up like, oh, that's a big loss.
I agree. I mean, like, Oregon has the money to get the very few premium guys in this class. 2 things. Number one, I know we have some questions in the chat on Oregon, so we might as well just from the private, or not private, but the starred portion of the chat. Why are you so down on Dante Moore? Who do you think the Ducks should have picked up in the transfer portal? Thanks, go Ducks. I know for a fact Oregon was definitely kicking the tires and looking at other quarterbacks in the transfer portal. Like, I talked to enough people in the industry. They did not get them. Arizona State kept Sam Levitt. I know there are a couple other guys they also looked at pretty hard. Now, it doesn't mean they were tampering with them, but obviously you got to kind of do your due diligence, make sure everybody's happy where they are, that kind of thing. But ultimately,
taking the temperature. It's not contact,
Yeah.
It's just taking the temperature.
You up?
Yep. But outwardly, you have to project that Dante Moore is our guy. He's been our guy no matter what, because you're trying to recruit off that, and you got to keep everybody happy in house. But this is not how the game is truly played. And I know for a fact that Oregon was really looking at other guys too. So it makes me wonder just how much they believe in Moore. But I imagine they believe in him pretty good bit, because otherwise Oregon has enough money to go out and get somebody they thought that person was clearly better than Moore. So I guess I circle back around to the idea that maybe they do like him enough relative to what was available in the portal, or maybe what could have come available in the portal.
They got 3 good offensive linemen, and when I think about just sort of the different ways that Oregon offensive line had to mix the pieces around, they were dealing with injuries, and it was a huge talking point for why it took the Ducks a couple weeks to get going. Buddy, there is nothing that hurts about having more talented big guys added to the roster. And that's what stands out to me about sort of Oregon's haul, is just identifying that when you're going to be breaking in a new quarterback, when you're going to be sort of taking the next step in whatever this offense is going to look like, having really talented offensive linemen to be able to try to put something together is a really great place to start for a program that has enjoyed the spoils of having a pretty good offensive line for the most part, though, over the last half decade or so.
So wouldn't this be a prime candidate for a school to watch after the spring
for quarterbacks?
See how it's going. Like, hey, if it's good, we're good. All right, we'll just hold our breath and hopefully it keeps continuing to progress. But if it doesn't, they open that back up. They lost the kid, right, that was there in January or there for the bowl practice, the kid that went to Cal.
Is that Novosad?
No, Jaron Kupatelli.
Oh, he was he was going to be an early enrollee.
He was there like 2 weeks, right? And then he was like, I'm out.
Start for Cal.
Yeah.
Yep. That was a good grab for them for sure. Elsewhere
for the Ducks, I read this on. Sorry, not this is the last thing for me on this. I read this on Duck territory, but their chief of staff, Marshall Macho, he said that this is the most talented West Coast class that they've seen since they've been there. So awesome.
Talking about 25,
26.
That the 26 class is the most West Coast talent that they've had in a couple years.
Yeah.
That's a good thing for Oregon, a good thing for USC, and a lot of those programs out
They'll
there.
probably all end up at Illinois.
Uh,
As a top 10 class in 2026 right now. I noticed we're talking about transfers when Illinois got a top 10 class. I see what you're doing, Chip.
Yeah, I'm just, the deep state continues to work against Illinois and preventing Illinois from getting the shine they need. What about programs that took big losses along the way? Who stands out?
Well, Purdue's entire team went in the portal.
I know. So
Purdue.
yeah, this doesn't need like a whole talking point, but I was also looking at like who are the very largest classes. The very largest classes: West Virginia, Purdue, UCF. New coach, new coach, new coach. Like roster left. Them getting 31 transfers is not going to be worth the talking point of like, is it sustainable? Because I'll tell you what, Rich Rod would be like, hey, buddy, I need to field a team right now. And this is one of the only ways that we can get out there and field a team. But yeah, what about programs that took some losses along the way?
I think it's also way more sustainable if your goal is to be like somewhere between like 40 and or like 45 to 25-ish in terms of like national ranking.
Right.
That I think is sustainable in the portal. I don't think you have like the top end of the draft guys in the portal, but I think you could easily sustain being a top half Big 12 team by portaling your entire roster every year and recruiting nobody at high school. I think that is sustainable, although it is expensive.
That's true. Because you never know what your market values are going to be, whether it's going to compare to replacement and all those things.
Are we skipping Miami's class? No, if Beck comes back healthy and plays at a high level, then it's a great class. If not, then it's, massively overrated. It depends on the one player.
Ooh, now Miami. Well, all right. So let's
watch Emory play in the bowl game? Like, I mean, good Lord.
All right. So Miami's average player rating is 90.6. That is second on a per player rating in the country behind Oregon. They do have a class that is welcoming just 11. So it's not, one of these crazy, they get a high ranking just because they've got 25 transfers in there.
And nearly half of it's in the secondary.
Yeah, Carson Beck is at the top, but Tom just hit on the storyline there. It is the way that you would hope. I mean, Miami is a conference title contender. Like they achieve that status. That's where we are. Miami is back. Texas is back. Everybody's back. We're done saying back. Okay. Now it's about getting over the hump. And the one thing that Miami needed a lot of help with was in the secondary. So Tom, you are correct. That's where most of these guys are. That's where most of these guys are going to have the most impact outside of Carson Beck, if you ask me.
Yeah, they got 4 new corners, and they've got 2 safeties, one of which was very, very public. Or no, wait, Xavier Lucas is a corner. Poiser's the only safety they have. Yeah, they looked at their secondary last year and said, "Wow, this is a problem." We also looked at our defensive coordinator and said, he's probably part of the problem that we're having in our secondary, so we're going to change all of it. And that's what they've done. Will it work? We'll find out. But I do agree with Bud. I think Carson Beck will ultimately decide how good this class was.
Like if Miami hits at a 50% rate on these DBs, they're probably fine on DBs. They don't actually need all 4 of them to hit. With Beck, it is a very binary outcome. If he hits, cool. If he's not healthy and can't actually play, which again, I think he will be healthy. Otherwise, I can't imagine you'd invest that kind of money in a player that doesn't have a near certainty of being good. But it does happen occasionally. So if he busts, then all these DB and all this other stuff they took, it doesn't really matter because they're going to come up short of expectations.
You mentioned before the show, you mentioned Alabama as a team that maybe didn't lose a lot of the high end guys that you're looking at. Who are some of the names that made you start thinking like, those are interesting names that are starting to hit the portal and head elsewhere?
Just like a lot of guys for Bama who don't start. And I'm still like really high on Alabama. I think when you look at their 22, I think they're going to be one of the more improved teams in the country. When talking about teams that were already like really damn good, obviously there will be teams that go from, 2-10 to whatever, or 4-8 to whatever, that'll show more improvement in the win column than the Tide will. But I think Bama should be really good, but they're going to have to stay healthy because they are losing a lot of guys who are going to like other decent P5 programs or better than decent in some cases to go take starting roles. So like that's a bit of a concern, I think, if you're the Tide. I thought Georgia Tech had some pretty key losses, losing Height, losing Singleton. It's not like they have a ton of difference makers on that team. So losing guys who were difference makers for them, that's a bad sign. I think Virginia Tech is in real trouble, to be honest. Just like look, they lose Jalen Stroman, who's expected to start at safety for Notre Dame. They lose Xavier Chaplin, who's expected to start, I believe, at left tackle for Auburn. You lose Phillips to Missouri. That's kind of whatever. You lose 2 offensive linemen, probably going to both start. You lose Delane, maybe your best corner, should start at LSU. That's a lot, man. Like I don't know. Scary.
Yeah, like going back to Alabama, they're going to be talented, but you mentioned like the injury factor of what they're losing because they've got 3 offensive linemen who have left via the portal and 5 defensive linemen. So when you start suffering injuries on your lines of scrimmage next year, if you're Alabama, you might have some very inexperienced players having to step into big time roles, and that could have an impact when you're playing in that league and what your goals are.
Yeah. Oh, it's a new day at Alabama, Tom. Who needs depth when now we've got dress code in the building? Oh, now people aren't late anymore. Oh, we're bringing back Alabama cult. Y'all got a little whiff of this? We're hitting.
I heard they're working out harder. The defense is going to be more aggressive. Offense is going to be more explosive, but also run the ball and be tougher.
They're going to show up into camp in the best shape of their lives.
Everybody's getting PRs straight across the board. PRs, man.
Listen, yeah, somebody was one player told reporters, I go, we don't do jewelry anymore. Okay.
Perfect attendance award.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Okay. The tailgate, we got some Wolfpackers in the or at least Wolfpack aware the members of the tailgate here today who are calling attention to the 17 players that left NC State. Look, 17 in itself is not a wild number. No, the concerning thing is where some of those 17 players went, like Casey Concepcion, star wide receiver. He ends up at Texas A&M. It is losing Brandon Cisse to South Carolina, Devin Boykin to Indiana, Bishop Fitzgerald to USC, to Marcus Cooley to LSU. I mean, these are good players that are going and finding homes at good programs. Not always the best feeling when you're a fan and you start to just run that math.
When players on your team enter the portal, you always wish them the best, but you hope the best is some small G5 league.
Yeah.
When they start going to better programs, you're like, oh, crap.
Do you know what NC State and the Hokies have in common?
They're in the ACC.
It felt like last year were kind of all-in years for them, and playing defense and keeping their important guys, and they both went belly up. And at some schools, like at FSU, they went 2-10, and guess what? Like the money cannon is still firing because football is that important there. I don't think that like the booster structure at Virginia Tech and NC State is the same level. So I think if you had guys who ponied up maybe more than they're used to keep your studs for 24, and then you suck, they're probably not coming back and donating the same level in 25 relative to what everybody else has. Like the number might be the same, but your ranking as to where that number puts you in the overall spending of the country is probably way less. That's a guess by me. It's not me reporting, but just kind of there's a commonality there.
They had to give all that money to Big Ben Middlebrooks. Danny negotiated a great deal, and they didn't have anything left for the football team.
There is a downside to being good at football and basketball. Like at some schools, it's like, yeah, basketball, what's that? We're just going to spend on football, right?
Right.
But NC State cares about basketball. Like their house money is probably not, $15 million going to football.
Right.
That's why the SEC sucks at football now, because their basketball is just
exactly
the greatest league on earth.
I think that there's a great point there because NC State and Virginia Tech were the dark horse conversation, and neither of them came in. They were not with any. Was it furloughs? Not furloughs. Furlinks? They were a lap down. They were not a dark
furlong.
Furlong.
There you go. To say furlough is a very different thing.
I know.
Something I hope the three of us never experience.
That's the NC State and Virginia Tech both eyed as teams that had a great opportunity in 2024 to maybe be a factor, and neither of them were anywhere close. So that's a great call by you, bud.
Is NC State basketball good this year? The chat's kind of roasting me for my
No.
takes.
No.
Not good. Okay.
No, it's bad. In fact, yeah, it's
Are the
gonna
Hokies any good at basketball?
they've taken a step back too.
The entire ACC stinks outside of like Clemson and Duke.
Like I knew Florida State sucked. I haven't watched a single college basketball game this year.
Right. Yeah.
But I will. Like I need a refresher. I should probably start listening to college basketball pods.
The Eye on College Basketball podcast.
That's
with Gary
right.
Parrish and Matt Norlander.
We'll start
catch you up on
listening.
everything.
It's a great time to tune into
They do sometimes talk about camel fighting. Dodo Bird.
We should do a crossover pod with them one day where it's like we just let them educate the non-basketball watching fans as like catch me up on the last 5 months of the sport now that it's tournament time.
It's a good idea.
It's a good idea. Nada.
Mikey, write it down.
Mikey, write it down. Nada, hit us up.
Let's do it.
Hey.
Chip and Tom go golf. Educate me, Gary.
Yeah. Tailgate. Let us know what you want to see from the Cover 3 Eye on College Basketball crossover podcast. We'll get it in the works. All right. We will be back on Wednesday, and our task, and this is some homework for all of us, okay? Homework for you in the tailgate, homework for us. Our task for Wednesday's Cover 3 podcast, 11 a.m., come watch on YouTube, is we are going to write the story of the season, the 2024 college football season. What are the games, the stories that have to be in the book? Okay, we're not going to be able to just like print out all the box scores and all the win probability graphs and call that's the story of the season. No, we need to be able to articulate what are the things that have to be included if we were to bind a book and put it on the shelf for the 2024 season. We will try to do that with your help on Wednesday. We are writing the story of the 2024 college football season. Thursday, mailbag. You know how to get at us. Always, you can reach out to us individually. You can reach out to us on social media. You can jump into the tailgate early. Drop your question, and you can leave us a 5-star review. And in that review, put your question. Spotify, we got you. We're going to find ways to get you involved as well. YouTube community tab. Lots of different ways to participate in Thursday mailbags. And you can follow him on Twitter at Tom Fornelli. You can follow him at Bud Elliott 3. You can follow me at Chip _Patterson. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.